Hey, hello. Welcome to this Sunday's live stream. I'm really excited to be here. This week has been a great week for me, and I hope it's been a great week for you as well. And I hope you guys can hear me. For those of you in the chat that are, I know it's a little bit of a delay, but give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Until then, we'll just keep talking. So Sundays is the day that I myself take the time to work on my dream project, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, and this Sunday is no exception to that. Now, my name is Brittany Lewis. I'm a professional artist. I'm a professional graphic designer, and I'm a tarot deck enthusiast. And again, my dream project is to launch my own tarot deck, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. I began this project in 2019, and we'll go into it in a little bit because we're starting new cards this week, right? But before we get into it, one of the easiest ways that you can support me, if you're interested in supporting me, is hitting the thumbs up button. That helps out a whole lot. All right. Thank you so much, PL. Thank you so much, Black Zetsu. I'm so glad that you guys can hear me okay. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I know the last couple of weeks we were doing live reactions and there was some wonky audio and things like that, but I'm glad that it's coming through pretty good. But now, again, Sundays is the day that I focus on this dream project. Again, if you want to support my channel, myself as an artist, there are a couple of ways you can do that. The first, easiest, quickest, and fastest way is to hit the thumbs up button. That lets YouTube know that you appreciate this video and that you think other people will enjoy it as well. Don't be stingy with the likes. Hit the button. That does me a huge favor. Another way for you to support me as an artist and my business as well is by visiting my website, blewisarts.com. And on that website, you can find out all kinds of information about myself. You can see my portfolio. You can buy merchandise and things like that. And I know that we're coming into the new year, which for historical purposes is usually when the time that people tend to start new projects. So if you are in the market for a new project, new artistic project, specifically in the realm of books, that's covers, that's illustrations and things like that, please be sure to hit me up because my books are open for the first quarter of 2025. So if you're interested in working with me on any level, it doesn't necessarily have to be books, but books is where I'm sort of focusing my attention. But if you do have a project that you think I would be a great fit for, be sure to hit me up. Be sure to send me an email or you can send me a message via Instagram, and I'm usually pretty quick to get back to you and we can get that ball rolling. All right, so without further ado, this week we are starting a new set of cards. Now, if you are new here, first of all, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. The Cosmic Gateways Tarot, again, is a project that I began in 2019. So I've been working on this project for 5 years, almost exactly. I started in November of 2019 with my first card, the High Priestess, and I've been working on it off and on since then. With this deck, there are going to be 78 cards. These cards are going to be slightly larger than your average tarot deck. This is an indie published tarot deck so far. I do not have any plans to go through a traditional publisher. This is very much going to be an independent project. And I'll show you some of the cards just to get an idea of what that project looks like. Now, over the past few episodes, we've been working almost exclusively on the Two of Wands. And I do want to show you guys what that looks like here today because we finished it. And I know it took about 7 or 8 Sundays to get through this particular card. But I am excited to have it finished. And today what we're going to do is work through the development of our threes because that is the new set of cards that I'll be working on. Now, when I began this project, I did not have a plan. I did not have sort of a roadmap. I didn't know anyone personally who had worked on a tarot deck project before. So a lot of this was learn as you go. I just needed to start the project, right? I didn't want to wait for the perfect opportunity because in my mind, there's never a perfect opportunity. Sometimes you just got to hit the ground running. Now, because of that, I've learned quite a bit along the way. And one of the things that I've learned to do is to design cards in batches, right? So that means that instead of designing one card and just trying to figure out what the next card is, card by card, I'll take a set of cards and design them in batches. And so today we're going to work on that. All right. So before we get into it, let's look at our Two of Wands because we have been working on this particular card for many Sundays and many holidays and many weeks and restless days. But I am very happy with the way that it turned out. Now, again, if you are new here, we started this card almost from scratch. We started it with a very basic sketch, right? We had an idea, and I finished that sketch for the most part live. And what we did was decided as a team. You guys helped me out so much with that. Where the wand should sit on the table, we sort of built a story around these two people planning, right? Because I wanted to design this card in a way that would be very easily read for the new reader. And that's something that we'll take into consideration as we go into designing our threes. But I think it came out really well. Now, I did pull elements from other cards. For instance, the color palette is from the Hierophant card. And then again, I'll show you the video here of all of the cards that we've designed so far so that you can kind of see what the Hierophant looks like once it comes up. We did pull the colors from the Hierophant card. I also pulled some plants and things like that. So our Hierophant card is this bottom middle card. And that was sort of the basis of this particular world. So we use the same color palette, and that seems to be a very good and effective way to drive continuity through the story of these cards, right? I also pulled pulled a plant from my Queen of Pentacles, and that's just sort of because this area needed a little bit of razzle dazzle. And by this area, I do mean the area behind the male character's head. It needed something, right? But it didn't need to be something overly rendered. It didn't need to be something overly complicated. So I just pulled an element from a card that I had already designed and put it in, right? Seemed to work pretty well. We also walked through the creation of the globe in this live stream series. We've walked through the creation of the characters. Now, what I did do off of live was that I finished my characters. I finished the books, and the bookshelf gave them details. I think when we started or wherever we left off with the books, many of these were not complete. They were just regular rectangles. I did decide to draw them in as opposed to using the book brush, which I think would have been helpful, but I felt like it needed to be consistent. And so one of the ways that I did that was to just draw it in using the same colors and color palettes from, again, the Hierophant card. The last thing that I did, or the last two things that I did, was to add maps to this table. Now, this is a personal Easter egg for myself. One of the maps is a map from, I believe, 1900 of my hometown, Chattanooga, Tennessee. That is what they're pointing at. There's also a map of Memphis, which is my current home, and a Civil War map of the sort of Chickamauga, Chattanooga area, because again, that's sort of where I grew up. And I believe that was a really nice little nod. That's something that we'll add to our companion book, which will be an optional purchase for this particular deck. The very last thing that I did for this card was to complete the wands. And so once I did that, the only challenge that I had was to make sure that my numbers showed up okay in the card when it went to doing the graphic design of it. But overall, I'm really, really happy about the way that this one turned out. It definitely tells a story, which is very important for tarot, because tarot is all about interpreting what's going on within the image, right? It's very image based and image heavy medium. And so I want to make sure that each reader can pull something from the cards that we design. All right, so I'm going to show you, just for a little reminder, what the twos look like. Now, there is a little bit of a hiccup with the Two of Cups, and I may or may not change it. There are a few cards within this deck that I'm not real sure whether or not I'm going to keep them the same or come back to revisit, but I'll kind of show you what that looks like once we get all the borders and everything in place. And you can kind of see a little bit better what the cards look like. So in my preview panel with the older couple, I hope you guys can see that pretty well. I'm gonna try to zoom in a little bit more so you can kind of see what's happening. This is the companion card for the lovers. So this card was modeled after the lovers card of the Major Arcana, which is one of my favorite cards. Is one that I refer to all the time. And because the lovers of tarot and the Two of Cups are pretty much sister cards, I wanted this particular design to reflect that. Now, the trouble with it is that though this is a two card, there's only one cup. And with the rest of the twos, for each item, there's two items, right? So I'm trying to decide whether or not I should revisit the two cups, if I should leave it the same. I'm not really sure. I do have a few cards within this deck that I am, going to revisit at some point. No time soon, because the goal is to get this bad boy finished. It doesn't have to be perfect right out the gate. We can always do revisions and special editions and all of that kind of stuff later on. But this is the Two of Cups. The next card is, I'm thinking, the Two of Pentacles. It is the Two of Pentacles. This is another one that we did live. And again, if you have missed some of these live streams, what I'll do at some point is I will include the card that we worked on for each live stream so that you guys can kind of surf through the videos and watch the development of each of the cards. Now, I don't always talk about the cards. Sometimes we talk about life. Sometimes we talk about, inspirational things. But for the most part, I am developing these cards live. And this one was this was the second one that I completed and one that I really, really enjoyed. Now, as an artist, one of the things that I can see looking at between the two cards, the Two of Cups and the Two of Pentacles, is a little bit of growth. And that was within like a month or so, right? So I started this live stream series in June of 2024, and I did the Lovers card first. This is the first card that I had worked on in a good long while, probably in about a year. And the Two of Pentacles was the second card. And so I can kind of see the growth between the two cards. But if I were to point to one that was very similar to the source material, the source material being the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, I would say the Two of Pentacles is probably one of the closest to the actual source material that we have. All right, so the next card should be the Two of Swords. This is another one that we did, of course, on live. And in this, I wanted to lean even more into telling a story of what is happening with our traveler as he comes to this fork in the road. We wanted to make sure that the swords were the highlight of this image, even though our eye as people, we just kind of naturally draw ourselves to people. We're naturally looking at people. I didn't want him to be sort of the main character. I wanted the swords to be the main character. And so we talked a little bit about how you can set up a scene to point the eye, point the focus in a specific direction. And so again, if you've missed those lives, what I will do, and I'll work on this week, is I will go ahead and add whatever image we're working on to the thumbnails. And that way, again, you guys can surf through those and sort of learn a little bit more about the process of each card. And then, of course, finally, we have our Two of Wands. And this is what it looks like with the border and the numbers. So one of the things that I was a little bit concerned about was whether or not the two would show up against the background, but I think I did pretty well in terms of keeping the background pretty muted. It's not super saturated. It's not sort of the main focus of this card. What's going on, or what the people are pointing at in the two wands on the table, is where I wanted to lead the eye. All right. So though that is the two of wands, and those are the twos that we've developed since June. Now, it's taken me a little bit longer than I would like to go ahead and go through the development of these cards. But as things even out a little bit as the new year begins, we will hopefully be able to zoom through a few more cards a little bit faster. All right. All right, so I want to show you what that looks like in terms of planning, because that's what we're going to do today. Now, I spent the last couple of days researching the cards. Of course, I've been a tarot reader for quite a while, so I do have my own sort of interpretations of things, but I do want to make sure that I have as much information as possible to create the best possible sort of design and illustration as I can. And so this is the process that we're going to go through. Now, the first thing that I like to do when it comes to designing batches of cards is to separate each set of cards into their suits. So in the minor arcana cards, that is the cups, the wands, the swords, and the pentacles. With that, we want to take into consideration what element that responds to, right, or corresponds to. For instance, cups is water. So if you want to go into astrology, that's all of your water signs. Your wands is fire. That's all of your fire signs. Your swords is air. That's all of your air signs. Pentacles is earth. So that's all of your earth signs. Now that also corresponds to a realm of sort of reality. So you have your emotional realm, you have your creativity, you have your mental realm, and your physical. And so all of those things are things that we have to kind of take into consideration as we're planning these cards. Now, I don't think that I'm going to plan all four. I am going to show you guys sort of the process that I take to thumbnail them. And so this may not be a very long live stream, and I'll do a little bit of this off of live so I can kind of concentrate a little bit more. But I do want to share with you sort of the research process and the resources that I use to plan cards. And so without further ado, I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller, and then we're going to get into the development of the three. So let's see if this works. Nope. All right, here we go. Okay, All right. So now, in terms of resources, right? Again, I've been a reader for a while, so I do have my own personal database of information. But if you are researching for tarot decks, if you are interested in learning how to read tarot, or if you're thinking about developing your decks, there are some books that I personally use, some websites that I use that will help you sort of develop your cards, right? So my first one is Intuitive Tarot by Bridget Esselmont. And that looks, I guess I maybe, let me make myself just a wee bit bigger so you guys can see this really quickly. And then we'll get into doing some writing. So the first book is Intuitive Tarot by Bridget Esselmont. I like this because she makes it very, very easy for you to figure out meanings of cards without having to go through the whole like study process. Now, I'm a person, I guess, I don't know if that would be considered a purist or what. I respect the craft enough to study sort of the traditional medium, but I also do read very intuitively. And so this is one of the books that we're going to use in terms of looking into the numerology of the cards, right? Because numerology is one of the things that tarot incorporates: numerology, astrology, your elements, and all of those kinds of things. Another book I should say that we'll be using is The 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Pollack. This is probably the one of the thickest and most well-written tarot books out there, and so we're going to be using some information from Rachel Pollack's book. And she recently passed away, so to her family, my condolences. But this is a great resource if you are looking to learn tarot or how to develop your own tarot deck, how to read, all things tarot. Right. The next book that I'm going to be using is Tarot by, and I believe her name is Tina Gong. Yep. Tarot by Tina Gong, which is another great resource. Now, Tina Gong is the owner of Labyrinthos. She has a whole app. So if you are interested in learning tarot and sort of needing the resources to, know what the different cards mean, this is a great book, but also her website is a great resource as well. And then finally, or not finally, in terms of tarot books, we're going to be using Tarot Wisdom by Rachel Pollack, another great resource. And I like this one because although my deck is very much heavily based on the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck, that's the source material for it, this book is great because it goes through sort of the history of the different decks and things like that. So I can get a more well-rounded meaning for different cards, which will help, right? And then finally, because I am a fan of numerology, and I think that numerology plays a major part in tarot and developing tarot and reading tarot, I'm going to be using Lloyd Strayhorn's Lloyd's Numbers and You workbook. Now, I have several numerology books. This one's just a really quick reference for me to get to what threes mean in numerology, so that maybe we can use some of that information in the development of those cards. So if you are, again, interested in learning more about the medium of tarot, more about using the cards, more about reading, if you're trying to develop your own deck, those are some of the resources that we'll be using. And I do have notes because I didn't want to be flipping through books while we work our way through these cards. Now, again, I'm not going to be sketching all of my thumbnails, but I am going to be sort of showing you the basic process, right? All right, here we go. All right, so I'm working in Clip Studio Paint. That is something else I should mention. Let me make myself small again. We're working in Clip Studio Paint, and I'm going to be grabbing a pen tool. The reason that I'm doing that is because we're here, right? And I can use this pretty quickly without, too much mess or anything like that. Now, what I will do is we'll go through and look at what our source material looks like. Now, again, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot is based on the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. All right. The reason that I base it on that particular deck is because that is one of the most widely written about and most widely studied deck in existence, to in my opinion, right? And so if I'm creating something for the new reader, I want to make sure that if they're not getting their information from myself, then no matter what tarot deck they pick up, no matter what tarot deck they pick up, right, they'll be able to find information about it and use it in this particular deck. All right. So now a look at our source material. This is our original Three of Cups, our original Three of Pentacles, our original Three of Swords, and our original Three of Wands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to label the top of my sheet. This is just a regular old canvas. This is the exact size of my tarot decks, right? My tarot cards. And so we're just going to write them out. So this is the threes of the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. Excuse my handwriting. I am writing on the screen, so it's not always going to be neat and clean. All right. So within the minor arcana cards, we have four suits. We have the cups, we have the pentacles, we have the wands, and we have the swords. All right. Now, with each of these suits, there is a certain sort of level of information that we can get, right? So, with the cups, we're dealing with your emotions, we're dealing with intuition, we're dealing with the moon, right? And which corresponds to hidden things in your subconscious. Your subconscious mind, I should say. All right. With the pentacles, we're dealing with the physical, right? So sometimes this is sexual relationships, right? There's something that we don't often talk about when we talk about pentacles, but that is your sexual relationships, right? That is relationships in general, right? So people, that is materialism. So this will be all of your earthly things, right? That is pentacles. Your wands deal with creativity. That is passion. And I think the wands, in my personal opinion, next to the cups is very spiritual. All right. With the swords, you're thinking about your thoughts, right? This is your mind. This is your conscious mind specifically. And this is also your ego, right? So these are some things that we're going to take into consideration as we develop these cards. In addition to that, we also have, and I'm going to put this on a new layer so I can turn it off. We also have your elements. So your cups are water, your pentacles are earth, your wands are fire, and then your swords are air. All right. All right, so that's pretty much the basis of each of the suits of tarot. And I feel like I'm teaching class, but this is sort of the process that I go through when I'm developing cards. I have to consider everything, right? Again, I want to make sure that we are creating cards that are easy to read, that are, understandable, but also are well thought out, right? So that's very important to me. I want to make sure that I'm creating a quality product that's sort of in line with the legendary feel and appeal of the source material. Okay. All right. So the next thing that we need to consider is, what does a three mean, right? All right. So in numerology, threes mean creativity. These people are very talented. People who are born under the number three, whether that means that your birthday is like the 21st, my birthday is July 21st, whether you're born on the 3rd, the 30th, whether your life path number, which is all of your complete birth date added up together, life path number three. These people are also quite ambitious, right? And again, excuse my handwriting, I am writing on the screen. These people are confident, right? So this number three usually deals with confidence. Oh, did I spell it wrong? And I did. All right. So these people are also sociable and optimistic. In addition to this, tarot also has sort of base associations with certain numbers. So in tarot, a three might mean a collaboration. And then what I mean is that there are similar themes within each of the three cards, right? So within tarot, we have collaboration. We have, of course, teamwork. We have lessons. Actually, we have goals being fulfilled, or at least the initial stage of goals. And I don't know if I'm spelling this right or not. Is it two L's or one? We're gonna make it one. I think it's two. Right? This is also like a teamwork sort of thing. This is also where you are getting lessons that you are learning and that sort of thing. All right. All right. All right. So in tarot, these are sort of your keywords. Now, of course, there is a positive and negative to each thing. So with the negative, you could get someone who's boastful, cruel, depressive. They lack discipline. Sometimes they're jealous and a gossiper and wasteful. But you also get someone who is naive, unfocused, and shallow when it comes to a number three. So all of these things, again, we have to kind of take into consideration for each of the cards. But now let's look at our source material and we're going to figure out what the heck we're going to draw for these threes in the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. Now, again, I'm just going to add a new layer, and layers is the panel right above my head. And if you were watching, it just popped up. It says layer 2. I'm going to add a layer so that I can turn some of this off if I needed to. But for right now, we're going to keep it. All right. So now looking back at cups, right? Or let's start with the swords, because the swords is one of the cards that I actually have an idea for. So we're going to go ahead and start there and make our way around. So with the swords, the three of swords usually deals with pain and sorrow. This is your heartbreak card. And this is the card with the heart and the three swords that most of us sort of associate. If you've never like looked at a tarot card before, chances are you've seen this particular motif. So this is all about heartbreak. And so my idea with it is to sort of illustrate what that looks like. I have some ideas. So let's we're gonna get through it and then I'll share with you guys what those ideas look like. So this is the three of swords. This is all about heartbreak. But again, if we go a little bit deeper and we look into what the cups mean, or not the cups, what the swords mean, in addition to what threes mean, one of the things to take into consideration is that swords have to do with thoughts, right? So maybe the heartbreak is a mental condition. Maybe it affects the mind. Maybe it is the connection between the mind and the heart. Because the idea that I have, or just looking at the source material before we get to that, looking at the source material, we do have a heart. We do have three swords pointing into the heart. And the most common interpretation of this is heartbreak. But one of the things that I read with Rachel Pollack is that she makes note that the swords are pointing down, which have to do with manifestation. And I think that's really interesting. My challenge is to decide whether or not I'm going to keep with the, source material, if I'm going to stay with the heart and three swords, or if I'm going to bend it a little bit, if I'm going to expand on it a little bit. That is something that I kind of have to take into consideration as I deal with that. And so me talking this out loud and showing you guys sort of the thought process and all of the creative juices flowing is sort of how I do that. Now, if I had one of y'all on here with me, we could spitball some ideas, but in the meantime, in between time, we'll figure something out. But I do have something in mind for it. And I'll tell you about that a little bit later. So in addition to pain and sorrow, this also deals with conflict in a group. Because again, when we think about threes, we're thinking about a collaboration or a group of people doing something, right? Or achieving a goal. And in this case, because this is a sword, um, there could be conflict within this group. All right. Next up, and I'm looking at my notes because I did take some, is the Three of Cups. Now, the Three of Cups is usually the image of three women sort of celebrating, right? So this is your party card. But again, cups has to do a lot with your emotions. So this could be an overall good time. Some people I've seen someone mention that maybe this is sort of Maybe it has a negative spin to it. I don't know. To me, it looks like they're having a good time. They got the pumpkins and the food and things around them. So we're probably going to lean into this idea of a sisterhood, right? All right. So with the Three of Cups, we have deep bonds. We have, and that will be between friends and family, and maybe a party or celebration. We're just gonna keep it simple. All right. Moving on, we have our Three of Wands. Now, again, the wands deal with relationships between people. It deals with earthly things. That is your materialism. That's money as well. I know Pentacles deal, not wands, what did I say? Wands? Pentacles. Pentacles deal with relationships between people, usually, sometimes sexual relationships, right? Materialism, earthly things, money, riches, wealth, that kind of thing. Abundance speaks to Pentacles. So, with Pentacles, specifically with the Three of Pentacles from the Rider Waite Smith, there is an illustration of a man who is building a cathedral, and then there are two people next to him. There is what looks like a bishop, and then I'm not really sure who the other person is in red, but they each have a sort of role to play in this image. You have your builder, you have someone who looks like they're holding plans, and then you have someone who's sort of orchestrating the building of this cathedral. So this one, more than most, sort of deal with collaboration. All right, this one also deals with skill building, which comes up again in the, I believe, the Eight of Pentacles. This one deals with implementation of a plan. And again, if my handwriting is all over the place, my apologies. I am writing on the screen with a little bit of a lag, so it's not going to be as clean as my normal handwriting would be, but we'll get there, right? And this also deals with education. That will be the Three of Pentacles. And I'm going to add direction, because from our source material, it looks like although there is someone building something, he's also getting direction from an outside source, right? And then finally, we do have our wands, which is all about creativity, passion, and again, to my sort of interpretation, I really give wands and fire a very spiritual energy, right? So with the wands, this is energy manifested, right? So this is taking a step further from the swords, where you might think a thought. The wands is where that thought becomes tangible and becomes an actual reality. So this is energy manifested. Right, but it also, and I'm going to pull up the Three of Wands. The Three of Wands actually corresponds a lot with the Two of Wands. So with our Two of Wands, let me see if we have it still pulled up. With our Two of Wands, it's all about planning and sort of making plans for things. We're trying to figure out what to do, where to go. Right. Your Three of Wands is the next step in that process. The Three of Wands deals with looking out and using that information that you got from the Two of Wands to foresee a future, right? That is looking ahead. That is, let me look at my notes. That is moving with momentum and making long term plans. So we want to add that, making long term plans. Now, in terms of the cards that I sort of have an idea for, um, this one and the Three of Swords is the two that I have sort of an idea for. So today I'm going to show you how I thumbnail the Three of Wands, because I think that's going to be the most intricate. And that is the one that I'm really curious about whether or not my idea is going to work. And thumbnailing is going to be the best way for me to figure that out, right? So let me write this. So this is making long-term plans, or having a long-term view, but we're going to call it plans just for now. And then also having foresight. All right. So, my next step, if I'm going to design cards based on this information, is to figure out what this looks like in real life, right? So, we do have our pain and sorrow and our heartbreak, and I think that we've all sort of experienced that at one point or another. And if you have not, count yourself lucky. And then we have our Three of Wands, which deal with sort of looking ahead, right? And so, one of the ideas that I have for my Three of Wands, and I'm going to label this thumbnails because now we're going to begin to sketch. I'm going to label this thumbnails, and what I'm going to do is sort of play out or play with the idea that I have for this particular card. Now, just a little bit of a backstory. I think I told this story a couple of streams ago. My idea for the Three of Wands came from a documentary that I saw, and it's very I think relevant to sort of the history of African American communities here in the United States. But this particular story takes place in Aswan, Egypt, where I was watching the documentary, or really just an interview of a guy, or by a guy named Benny the Polyglot, and he was in Egypt, Aswan, Egypt, and he was interviewing a Nubian man, and the man sort of gave this very brief overview of how his sort of people were a big community. They were separated by the river. And because of that, their language changed, right? So now these two groups of people who probably share a lot of ancestral traits aren't able to communicate with each other, right? But within this community, they had artifacts, they had, temples, and they had schools and all of these ancient things. But they were flooded by the Nile, flooded in order to sort of dam off the Nile, or something happened. So underneath the Nile are all of these monuments, all of these artifacts and things like that are just sort of lost, right? Reminds me very much of the story of Lake Lanier, also the story of Central Park. So there is this sort of continuity of a community being sort of lost to the interest of someone else. And so I kind of want to lean into that a little bit. But what I would like to do in this thumbnail, and what I would like to do is sort of illustrate what it would look like if those secrets were revealed, right? So we're looking out ahead. We're going to stay in realm with the sort of idea of these cosmic gateways. I'm going to include a gateway. Because this card is only so big, I'm not really sure how much I can include. So that's where thumbnails sort of help. Because what a thumbnail will do is help me sort of lay out the composition of the piece, right? So I'm going to use my source material, this Three of Wands that I have up on the screen, as a basis, but I'm going to add extra information to that. Now, none of this is going to be pretty. None of this is going to be fully sketched out. This is very much going to be just stick figures, right? These are this is what a thumbnail looks like. And I'll show you just really quickly what they looked like in the tools. When I went to develop the tools, these are super basic. This is just going to remind me when it's time for me to draw the actual image, what I was going for, right? And I'll have notes if I want to. And I probably will in this case, because for some of these, I'm not sure how long it'll be before I actually get to drawing this particular card. But I do want to make a note of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, sort of what this means, so that I can come back to that information a little bit later, right? All right, so the first thing that I do when I'm drawing thumbnails is I sort of do a very rough box, right? Now, again, a thumbnail is just sort of your very baseline idea. This is roughly the dimensions of my cards. They're a little bit wider and a little bit taller than your traditional tarot deck, right? What I would like to do is I'm going to work my way from the back forward, right? So I do want to do a gateway in the back of this scene, and I want to do it in the shape of like a door, right? And so my idea is that when this gets colored, it'll be sort of the color of the Sahara Desert. So things will be very orangey, which goes in line with this being a fire card. So I do want a gateway. I think I'm going to do it as a door. I might do it as an arch later. I'm not really sure, but this is sort of in the background. And from here, we can sort of work on the perspective. Now, of course, these perspective lines are not going to necessarily be drawn in, but this will sort of help me make things bigger as it comes closer to the camera. So we're going to label this perspective. All right. Now from here, and I'm also going to label this gateway so I know what I drew. Actually, let me not go too far out. So we have room for the other cards. So this is going to be gateway, and I want it to be glowy, right? Now, between this gateway, and we may push it back further. And the way that I would do that is to make the actual gateway of the door smaller. This is going to be very small on the card, but it's going to be one of the brightest things there, so that we know that this person on this journey who's looking ahead is looking at his next gateway. Now, again, if you are very new here, the idea of the Cosmic Gateways Tarot sort of came as a result of some personal life things that were happening, right? And it dawned on me that once you finish and learn one lesson, then you sort of graduate to the next lesson, right? And so this is sort of the basis of the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, also the basis of the Fool's Journey, which is the major or the tale of the major arcana cards. And that's sort of where we go. When you finish one lesson with one card, you move on to the next. And so that is the basis of the Cosmic Gateway Tarot. So I do want to include a gateway in one of the minor arcana cards, if not more than one. So this is the one that I for sure had in mind, right? All right, so we have our gateway. Now, what I would like to do from this point forward, and I'll show you what I mean, all right? What I want to do as the eye moves closer to the camera is I want to start to add monuments somewhere in here, right? And eventually I'll get around to my main character sort of being over to the side with his three wands. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to draw in our main character, so that way I kind of have his placement together, or her placement. I'm not real sure what it's going to be, but I have sort of the idea of where I want my person. And I am again going to use the idea of him holding onto one. Maybe this is his sort of walking stick as he goes on this journey. Maybe that's wand number one. Right? And then maybe rather than have them sort of next to him, and maybe we can, I don't know, but maybe we'll put the other two wands as pillars in the background, right? And I'm going to label them so I'll kind of know what I did. All right, so we have our main character here. He has an arm, or she has an arm. She's holding on to this thing, right? Now, between this point and the foreground, I want to add some monuments. So this is probably going to be, because I'm thinking of the story of the guy in Aswan, Egypt, and the Nubians there. This might be maybe a sphinx's head that's sort of buried in sand. Right? And again, this doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, but I am going to label it so that when I come back to it, I'll know exactly what it is that I'm looking at. And maybe now that I'm thinking about it, maybe our wands in the background can be obelisks. And I'm hoping I spelled that right. But if not, I'll know what I mean, right? So we have our first head in the sand. We might have sort of a sandy background, right? So we have these sand dunes. And then maybe we'll have, since we have obelisks here, maybe a little bit in the background behind our portal, maybe we'll have a pyramid, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, and you guys will correct me if I'm wrong, the upright triangle is the fire sign, right? And this is a fire card. All right. So that's sort of the first idea that I have for the Three of Wands. Now, what I can do, and I'm going to see where, okay, what I can do is I can actually take this and I'm going to duplicate it down. And what I'm going to do is change this up just a little bit, right? So I'm going to keep the pyramid the same. I'm going to keep the Sphinx's head the same. I'm going to take out the obelisk in the background. And then what I'm going to do is add the three pillars, much like they are in the source material. I'm going to add them sort of closer to where our character is. So maybe it is appearing that he's sort of on this ledge, just like our source material, right? and he's holding on to these bamboo wands. And what I'm going to do is make a note to myself. I'm going to call this option 2. And we'll take the wands and make them trees or bamboo poles or whatever. And we can make it look as if he is sort of looking out of this forest and he sees this portal, right? So there may be some finessing going on so that we make sure that we can see each element that I want to show in this particular picture. But the main thing is I want him to feel like he's uncovered something and he's on his way to his next step. All right. So that is the 3 of Wands. And I'll zoom out just a little bit so you guys can kind of see what that looks like in terms of a thumbnail, right? So the next thumbnail that I sort of have in mind is the 3 of Swords. Right now, there are a couple of ways that we can address the 3 of Swords. Now, of course, the main sort of interpretation of the card is to deal with heartbreak. And so the sort of back and forth that I'm having with myself is whether or not I want to go with the original source material, which again is the heart with the 3 knives. And I'll show you guys that in just a second. We'll pull that up and we'll talk a little bit about it. Or if I want to illustrate what heartbreak looks like, right? So I know that when I get to sort of the 9 of Swords and the 10 of Swords, where you deal a little bit more with depression and anxiety, I can sort of illustrate the feeling and the heaviness of having depression and anxiety. So I don't know yet if I want to go that route, right? Or if I want to stick a little bit closer to the source material. My very first initial sort of idea is to go close to the source material with a little bit of a spin. So again, I'm going back to my thumbnails here. I'm just sketching out a tarot deck or tarot card sized box. And also I want to keep in mind that I have a border. Now that is something that I'll sort of address as I get to pulling these thumbnails into a file and actually sketching them, but that is something I want to keep in mind. So now the first idea that I have is that rather than have this sort of Valentine heart as my heart with the clouds and the swords, what I would like to do is actually put the heart in someone's hand. Now, my hand, I'm going to thumbnail here, is probably not going to be great, but what you cannot see is I'm going to be holding my hand so that I can sort of see what the shape of a hand looks like and what that'll look like if they're holding a heart and sort of squeezing it, as to say that, your heartbreak is oftentimes a result of outside influences. And because I don't know what a heart looks like, I do, but I don't, I'm going to go and I am going to look up an anatomical heart so that I can draw a little bit closer to reference. All right, here we go. It's been a minute. Now, I did draw some hearts 2023, so this was last year. Today is December 29th, our last live stream of the year, which I'm very excited about. We've done a very great job, I feel like, of being real consistent with, live streaming and sharing the process of creating this tarot deck. So here's my heart. This is as close as we're going to get today, because that's all I need, right? We're not trying to sketch. We're not trying to make it perfect. I just want to thumbnail this heart. And what I want to do is I want to have a hand holding this heart. So again, I am kind of holding my hand out so that I can draw a very rough sort of estimation of what a hand looks like. And then I can tweak this a little bit later. Now, again, this ain't going to be perfect because I'm just wanting to get the idea of this hand sort of holding this heart. I do also want this hand to sort of have a grip on this heart, right? Because that's what heartbreak feels like. It feels like somebody has a grip on your heart, and I want to have this heart bound. So we get into a little bit of magic and metaphysical things, right? I want to have this heart bound. And then from there, and what I probably will need to do as I create this particular card and this particular motif is I'm probably going to have this take up most of the space, just so that we can add the swords into this, right? But the idea here is that your heartbreak is sort of predicated not only on someone else's sort of actions, but also on your own thoughts of those actions, because we can kind of stay in a place of heartbreak for a long time, just by thinking it and replaying it and wishing we had done better and all of those things. I think that corresponds with the swords themselves, because swords, again, are a mental attribute. They have a mental attribute, right? All right. So our swords will sort of stick through. They'll be daggers, right? They'll kind of stick out like so. And I'm going to make a note so that I know exactly what I just drew. And this will be something that we'll come back to a little bit later. So we'll say hand holding a heart or hand squeezing a heart. Oh, come on. There we go. And I can also describe how I want this hand to look, right? Do I want it to be a feminine hand? Do I want it to be a masculine hand? In this case, I have the idea of having sort of like the long, gnarly, stiletto nails on this particular person. I kind of want this to be a female character. So I'm going to make note of that, right? And maybe because this person's nails are long, I could also entertain the idea of her nails being sort of the daggers that stab this heart, right? So I want to make note of that. Now, within this card, there's also the motif of rain. There's also the motif of clouds. So we may also include that in some way. Rather, that could be whether or not I would do the actual clouds, right, and actual illustrate the rain, or I could do it sort of like as a cloud tattoo, sort of on the palm of her hand. We'll kind of play with that, but I will make a note to add clouds or make this sort of a grayish bluish card, right? So that it feels like a heartbreak. All right. So that is one idea we can have, right? We could go that route. I don't know whether or not that is going to work. But because we're here spitballing ideas and sort of thumbnailing and figuring it out, we can also go the route of maybe what does heartbreak look like, right? And so again, when I am designing my cards, one of the things that I like to do is sort of get an understanding of the meaning, but then apply it to a real life scenario, right? So how does that feel? What does that look like? What does a person who's going through heartbreak do, right? What are their, eyes and things do? What is their posture like? So that is something that we may consider. When it comes to heartbreak in this particular case, even though the 10 of swords isn't a heartbreak card, I think the feeling of that defeat from the 10 of swords, which means like a very hard end, tens usually deal with the end of a cycle. That sort of laid out feeling of sort of defeat is the vibe that I would go with if I were illustrating a person, right? So now this particular card, now the heart with the hand is something that I had thought about, so I had a good idea of what that might look like. But if I were to go ahead and illustrate what that could look like for a person who is dealing with heartbreak, then I'll sort of, pay attention or pay a little more attention to body language, right? So I know a while back we were on live with Lee and Sam. If you guys have not had an opportunity to check that video out, I highly recommend doing so. And in that, I did a demonstration where it was our very first interview. So there's two. So the very first one, I did a demonstration where I took a character that Sam had created and gave her a sad posture, right? So that's sort of the idea of what I would like to do here. I kind of want to do, so I'm going to do this. So I'm going to draw a head, right? I want this head to be tilted down, looking down, right? I also want to have it slightly forward. So I'm going to push the shoulders back, right? And maybe this person is sort of, I don't know, leaning up against something or just sort of laid out and in this sort of defeated posture. And I don't think you would see his legs like that. So it'd be something like this. Oh, not like that either. Right? Something like this. Kind of flayed out, right? But instead of having our heart motif, right? Maybe we have the sword sticking out of him or her. So we make our person the main character here, right? But we also want to make sure that, right? Something like that. I don't know. I don't know. I kind of like the heart in the hand idea better, but we'll see how that goes, right? All right. So now we can probably tackle these other cards. Let's see. We'll give it a try. I have no idea where I want to go with these. I have no idea what that could look like. But for the sake of sort of showing you the process, and as I do this, and when I come back next week, we'll show you sort of the finished developmental sheet and where this goes. But just sort of for the process, we'll do one more, and then we're gonna call it a day, right? All right. So I think what I would like to do is the Three of Cups. Now, to me, the Three of Cups is very much a sister circle, right? This is very much a sort of a women's celebration. It gives pagan. It does. Let's show you what that looks like. It does. It gives very much a Wiccan vibe. I would like to turn that up and go the African traditional religion route, right? Or maybe not even that much, right? Maybe just a sisterly bond between people who are enjoying each other in a very sacred and feminine space. And I think for this particular card, I'm probably going to stick pretty close to the source material. I'll probably have them in all white or something like that. Maybe they all look different, but they are enjoying each other. They are uplifting each other. They are creating these bonds with each other as women should do, right? So I think we're gonna stay pretty close to the source material. So for that, I'm just gonna thumbnail out what we have here, and then what I will do later is I will come back and sort of add my own spin and razzle dazzle to it, so that it is my card, or not necessarily my card, because once you put it out there, it's out there. But it is more a B. Lewis Arts design rather than a copy of the Rider Waite Smith source material. But let's say, for instance, this is what I come up with. This is sort of how I would draw it. Maybe we have them dancing, right? And again, because water signs tend to be very loving and nurturing, I want this to feel like a very loving and nurturing sort of environment. But on the flip side of that, right, once we get into our reversals, maybe this isn't so loving. Maybe there's something sinister behind it. But I do want to make sure that I highlight, right, some of the attributes that we want for each card. And then we have a cup here. And so if I were thumbnailing, let's say this is what I want to go with. This is sort of the idea that I would have. And I would make them note that they are dancing. And this is a sort of a sacred sister circle type situation. And then I'm going to say revisit because I'll come back to it. All right. And then I would do the same for the Three of Pentacles, which deals with collaboration. But rather than have him build a cathedral, I might do something like a pyramid or just something on brand with the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. All right. So we're not going to do that here, but I do want to zoom out and give you another look at what we've done so far in the course of planning out the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, the threes of the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. The first thing that I did was to divide each of the cards into their respective suits, right? So we have the cups, we have the pentacles, we have the wands and the swords. And with that comes a universal sort of interpretation of those suits. So cups deal with emotions, intuition, the moons of things that are hidden in your subconscious mind. The pentacles deal with earthly things, materialism, relationships, and usually physical or sexual relationships. The wands deal with creativity, passion, and spirituality. And also the swords deal with thoughts, the mind, specifically the conscious mind and the ego. So that is your mental realm. When it comes to the threes in numerology, the threes just in regular numerology, according to Lloyd Strayhorn and as well as numerology.com, because that's sort of where I cross-referenced all of my information between those two sources. Threes deal with creativity, being talented, ambitious, confident, and sociable. But in tarot, they deal a lot with collaboration, goals being fulfilled, teamwork, and also learning lessons, right? So now from there, I took the threes in addition to our common interpretation of each of the suits, and I gave each card a keyword, right? Or a set of keywords. So with the Three of Cups, you have deep bonds, you have family and friends, you have party and collaboration, party and celebration. With the Three of Pentacles, you have collaboration, you have skill building, implementing a plan, education, and also direction. With the Three of Wands, we have energy being manifested, meaning you bringing a thought into reality and creating something brand new from it. So you have creativity, you have making long-term plans, and also foresight. And also, lastly, you have the Three of Swords, which deal with pain and sorrow, heartbreak, and conflict. Now, again, I will come back and revisit some of these ideas, especially with the Three of Cups and the Three of Pentacles, because I believe that I can sort of stretch this a little bit further. And if not, it is what it is. So we'll get it completed either way. But today we did go ahead and play with a couple of ideas that I had specifically for the Three of Wands and the Three of Swords. Now, these two ideas were something that I was sort of playing around with this leading up to today. The first is the Three of Wands, where we have this sort of overlook scene with someone sort of looking ahead to this portal as he continues his journey after he's planned whatever the next course of action is with the Two of Wands, right? And so with that, I have two alternatives to that. One is to have our character sort of on this hill as he holds his staff, and in the background, the other two wands will be obelisks in the background. There will be a pyramid behind our portal, but he's sort of headed through this portal and he sees all of these sort of artifacts being revealed, which is a nod to your Lake Laniers, your Central Parks, your now where all of these great monuments and things have been lost and flooded. But this is sort of a revelation that these things exist because now the river is dried up and they're in this desert. That is the story behind the Three of Wands. The alternative to that was, instead of having the pillars in the background, the obelisks in the background be the ones, I would have them be sort of a forest in the foreground, right? Very similar to our source material, where we would have three sort of, like he's emerging from a forest, and one of the wands that he's holding is sort of the tree, very, very close to our source material. But then you have all of the extra things happening in the background. We also play with the Three of Swords. Now, again, my idea is to lean into the heartbreak aspect of that. Swords deal very much with the mental realm. But I think our most common interpretation of this card is that it deals with heartbreak. And so that is something that I want to lean heavily into. And with that, my idea is to have a heart, an anatomical heart, being held in a person's hand and squeezed relatively aggressively because that's what heartbreak tends to feel like. I also want to have this heart bound, right? Again, playing with the sort of metaphysical and magical element to this. But I do have two options in terms of what to do with the swords. I can have the fingernails of the person holding the heart be the daggers that sort of stab this heart, or I can have it where we have the daggers sort of piercing the heart, very much like, again, our source material. And then I play with the idea of what heartbreak looks like, what it feels like for a person to experience. And maybe that's sort of where we lean into it. I'm really going to probably go with the hand and the heart. I think that'll be, again, close to the source material, but just different enough to be in line with the rest of the plans of the swords that I have. So that is the end of today's live stream. I didn't want to do the planning for you guys live because I don't know how tedious this is for you to watch, but I do appreciate you being here. One thing that I have not said was thank you so much, whether you're watching this live or you're watching the playback. I really, really appreciate you for being here. And I really, really appreciate you for sort of supporting this project, whether you've just found it or you've been supporting it for years, it means the world to me because it definitely keeps me going when my inspiration and motivation fails. Because I always hear something from you guys to sort of as a nod or a nudge of encouragement, even just the question of when this thing is going to come out. I don't know, child, but we're going to keep working on it until we get there. Now, one of the quickest and easiest, the fastest, freest ways that you can support my channel if you enjoyed this live stream is to hit the thumbs up button. That really, really helps me out a whole lot. That lets YouTube know that you value this content, that you enjoy hearing me talk a little bit. And let me know if you like this kind of thing, right? Because normally this is what I would do sort of through the week. Thank you so much, PL. PL says she enjoyed the planning of the cars. I really, really appreciate that. So if you do like this kind of thing, we have a lot of cars to plan. So before each batch, we could do another video very much like this, where we plan out more and more of the cars, and you can kind of see the thought process and see the sort of development. Because next week, what we'll do is we will take one of our thumbnails. I don't know if that's going to be the Three of Wands or the Three of Swords, because those are the two that I'm the clearest about. We will take those thumbnails and I will show you how I take a thumbnail and turn it into a sketch, and eventually we'll turn it into a finished card, very much like we did with our Two of Wands. We kind of came in with a base sketch and sort of finished it over the course of 6 or 7 live streams. So again, if this is something that you really enjoyed and you found informative, be sure to let me know in the comments or in the chat, or you can send me a private DM if you don't want to do it publicly. All good, all is well. But I do thank you so much again for watching. Again, if you want to support me, please leave a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, please do that, and be sure to hit the notification bell so that when I do go live again, then you'll be notified. So I do appreciate you so, so much. And until next time, I hope you all have a happy and prosperous week and a great new year, because we got New Year coming up. So set your goals. Let's get that going. If you have a project or anything like that that you would like to talk to me about, I'd be happy to have you on. All right. Until